Hi, in this video, we'll be covering form filling with Dataminr. Form filling is anytime you need to fill out a form, perform a search, or essentially take some data from a CSV file, inject it into a web page, and then scrape the results. For this example, we'll be doing an advanced search of a book site. For this video, we'll be covering three main topics. The first step will be filling out the CSV with the information that you wish to fill into the form. The second step will be building the recipe that will eventually work with the form. And then within that same recipe, we'll also be building the scraping element to the recipe. And then finally, with that form filling and scraping recipe, which is just one, but we'll be using that recipe to finally do the third step, which is writing the form filling recipe, which will inject the data and then scrape the results and make it available for you to download. And many times, this is a step that will be done before a crawl, which is where Dataminr captures a list of URLs, visits them, and then scrapes the data with an additional detail recipe to capture all the different information that comes from individual pages. That is what we refer to as a crawl, and we do have additional information about that on our website. But for this video, we'll be doing just a simple form filling process. So that said, let's go ahead and jump right in. So first, I'll be building the CSV file that has the data that we want to inject. So we'll keep this simple, but first you want to start with the titles. This is so you can then connect the columns with the Dataminr recipe. So let's go ahead and do, say we want to go after the author. So let's start with that, put that in the first column. Let's say we want to search the name Jim, perhaps Ben, and Tom. And for an additional one, let's say we wanted to do a keyword. So we'll copy that. And let's say for the keywords, we want to search a book that is about dogs, a book that is about cats, and finally, let's say a book about food. And so these at this point are just different pieces of text that will be injected into inputs, but the form filling recipe can also do additional elements as well with the form. So further down, you'll see that there's a product type. So these are different either checkboxes or radio buttons, and Dataminr can handle these. So let's go ahead and do one of these. And when it comes to communicating this information in the CSV, you'll either use a 1 for a yes, or a check, a 2 for an uncheck, or a 3, which will toggle, meaning it'll just do whatever is the opposite if it's on the page. So for right now, um, if books were automatically checked and you had to untoggle, it would then uncheck it. Or the opposite, if it was blank, it would then check it. But this is something that you can always play with on your end as well. So for the product type, let's say we want this to be a book. Let's give that a more specific book. And we want the first one to be, yes, a book. But let's say for the second one, we want it to be comics. So it'll be a comic about cats. So we'll do a secondary column for that because these are separate check boxes that need to be clicked. So we'll do and also I will be doing a few of these elements just as different examples. But if you're more interested in the actual process of setting up the recipe, I recommend skipping ahead. This will just be maybe another minute or two. Let's say we'll be doing so for comic we'll be and that's going to be a 1. And then let's say for the food we'll do a book again, so that'll be a 1. Great. So now that we have the different kind of product types chosen, we'll do an example of a dropdown now. So for this, let's say, so here is just where you're going to be essentially determining the value ahead of time. So let's say we want the seller to be just in North America. So we'll be doing one more column for the seller, and these are all going to be in North America. And let's do one more for this. Let's do let's do a radio button. So um, mm, let's go ahead and turn off the group similar or group similar results. So let's go ahead and turn that off. So we'll make one last column for that. And since this is already on, we'll be using the 2 to do to uncheck it. Great. So this looks good for just an example form. So again, this is just the data. The next step is to be building the recipe portion of or I guess the form filling portion of the recipe. So to do that, we'll open up DataMiner on this same form. And since we are still testing this version or this feature, this DataMiner that you see might be slightly different than yours. All right, so we'll click the new recipe and go to the type tab, and let's choose the form filling option. And we'll move on to the next tab, which is the forms. And so our system will automatically find all the forms available on the page. So what you'll do is first expand that first step, and then choose the one that you want. So as you can see here, it says form 3. So we don't care about this top search or the top form. There's probably one more on the page somewhere. So from this dropdown, we'll be choosing form 3. And the next step is to determine where the submit button is. So that's at the bottom here. And when you click into step 2, it will either automatically find it for you if our system is able to, but if it's not, just simply we can pretend that it was not able to find it. And what we'll do is just simply click the element finder, which then turns your mouse into kind of a magic wand. And then you want to hover over the search button or the submit button and then hit F on your keyboard. And if you ever think that it's not working properly, what that means is the focus is probably on the data miner rather than the website. So as you can see, if I expand this, they're kind of on they're focusing different windows. And for the hover and find process, you do have to be focused on the actual web page. So right now I'm focused on Recipe Creator. So we want to click under the website and now focus on the website. Great, so now that we're focused here, we'll hover over the submit button and then hit F. Great, so as you can see now in Recipe Creator, it found it. So now we can click confirm and we move on to the third step. And this is where you begin building the different elements or the different portions or parts of the form. So let's click from this drop down. And for our first element, we'll be doing a text input because it was the author's name. And let's just call this author. And move up to that section. And for now the element, we're going to click the element finder. And you want to hover over that input and then hit, similar to before, we'll hit F. And as you can see, we now found that element, so that's great. And we'll go ahead and click confirm. And for just testing, we recommend trying it out because then that is what will then allow you to finally submit it in the end to make sure that this is all working. So for the author, let's just go ahead and use, say, Zach, my name, and then we'll say OK. And let's click edit. Let's do that one more time to Zach. I forgot I have to do test it. Great. As you can see, it is now in the input, so that looks great. So now we can click OK. And we'll go ahead and add to our recipe. So now let's do one more input since we'll be doing keyword. Oops. Keyword. And we'll do the element finder. And let's go to the keyword. And again, we want to hover over the input. So not the title, but the actual input itself. And then hit F and click confirm. And for this, let's say we want to search maps and do test it. And that looks great. So now we can click OK. And so for our next element, I believe was a checkbox. Yep, so it's the book. So I want to come down here and we want to do the checkbox. And this one's called book. And we want to find to the Finder, hover over the book option, and you want to do the actual check or the input of the element, and then hit F again. And we found it, looks good. Click Confirm. And similar to as we were mentioning earlier with the 1 and the 2, since we want this to be checked, let's do a 1. And click Test It. Looks great. OK. And for our next one, I think we did the comics, but this was a checkbox. And Finder, hover and hit F, confirm, and let's test that with a 1 again to test it. Perfect. Click OK. Great. So I think we have the drop down now. So from again our menu will be this time we'll do drop down. Scroll down to the seller option, and we'll call this seller. I believe that's what I called it. Yep. Great. And this time we'll hover, hit F over the menu, click OK. And for now the test data, so I apologize, I was incorrect earlier. So when you're doing the drop down, rather than the actual value, like the text value, you have to do it based on its position. So since earlier I picked North America, what we actually need to do is find its position in the drop down. So it is in the third position. So what you'll need to do for this is you can either create some sort of rule in Excel where you can then have like a column that is associated with the value. So you can have both the data and the text, and then that text will just be skipped later in Excel, or I guess in the form filling, or you can create a key somewhere outside of the data and just know that the 1 represents worldwide, 2 is European, and then 3 is North America. So let's go ahead and go back to our file and change that. So we want this to be North America, so we'll be doing 3. And let's go ahead and test that here as well. So we'll be choosing 3. And let's do test it. I believe it starts at 0. Let's go back to 2. There you go, perfect, North America. So change that to 2 here as well. Great. And lastly, we have the group similar results, and that, let's click OK. Don't forget to click OK, otherwise it will not be saved. And for our group similar results, we're going to be doing, this one is, I think this one will be doing perhaps just a click. Yep, so let's just try a click for this one. Hover and hit F. And we want to turn this off. So if we do not, for this one, if you do not, to not click, you do a 0. Oh, wait, no. So we want to click it because then we'll turn it off. Perfect. So as you can see with a few of these different features or element methods, you can get a little creative with how you want to control the form, because this probably could be done with the radio or maybe even the checkbox. Actually, probably not the checkbox, but this might be able to be done with the radio as well. But it kind of ultimately comes down to Dataminr is super customizable, and it gives you a lot of control of how to work with different forms, but you might have to play with it a little bit to see what works best for your setup. But as you can see, testing is pretty easy, and we eventually got there. Great, so now let's go and click OK. And finally, let's click test the form. So click test submit. Perfect. And of course, during this process, we might ask for a few permissions. So you want to say allow. But as you can see, we are now looking for the different parameters in our search results. So this is great. Cool. So this is essentially, we've gone through the first step, which is building the CSV of the data, and now we're halfway through the second step. So we built the form filling portion, but now is to build the scraping portion. And this is where you typically would then build a list recipe to capture the URLs for all of the different items, which would then ultimately be in one other project called a crawl, which is where it captures all the detailed information. But again, we have a separate video for that. So let's go ahead and move on to the scrape section. So for this, I'm going to go a little bit quicker, or I'll move through it a little bit more with less kind of focus, just to kind of get to the actual form filling process part, because we do have videos for this as well. So for the rows, I'm going to click the Easy Row Finder and hover over the first item. Here I'm just using the title, and then I want to do the same thing and hover, hit 2 over the second item. And as you can see, we automatically found the rows. So this is going to tell DataMiner how to organize everything. And now for the columns, so we want to do add new column. I'm going to capture the URL. And we'll do the easy column finder. We want to capture the URL. And we want to hover over where we expect the URL. So we'll hover and hit C this time. So we didn't find anything there, but that's when you can use the expand selection button. Great. So that moved up the HTML and it found the URL. So that's perfect. So now we can click confirm. So everything's looking good. All right, so the next step would typically do the navigation. However, it looks like the search that I did provided only one page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck books. No, I'm essentially trying to get it to uncheck North America. Great, so now we have 29 results. Get to the bottom. Oh, so we'll get there eventually. Perhaps you need maybe like 30 for a next button. But essentially, I'm trying to get a number of results that allows us to have a next button at the bottom. So bear with me. Let's go ahead and just edit the search and say we don't want maps, and we just want the author of just books. And now we'll do a search. Great. So now we have the next button available here. So let's go back to DataMiner, and I'm going to just essentially, I'll redo the URL process so we can kind of get an updated look at our recipe. Because right now it's showing only 8 rows, which is obviously not correct anymore. So let's redo this real quick just to kind of get updated selectors. So hover and hit C, click confirm. Let's do the rows as well, because it's not giving me the best feedback. All right, so now we got the 30 rows, perfect. And come here, great. So now we have the 30 URLs. Perfect, so I decided to update the rows to get the new updated results. So now that was just kind of a quick just modification to the process, but now let's go ahead and move on. We'll go to the navigation. And this is where you click the next button to move through multiple pages. So for this, you can do the easy nav finder. And similar to everything before, you're going to take your mouse, hover over the next button, and hit N, and click confirm. And we can also test this as well. So click the test nav. Great. As you can see, we're now on page 2. Now we're on page 3. Perfect. So everything looks good for the navigation. So at this point, we're actually pretty much done setting up the recipe. We did the form filling, and then we did the scraping, and then finally we finished the navigation or the pagination. So now all that's left is to save it. So let's go to the Save tab, give this a name. Let's call it just form fill test URL list. Great, so we'll go ahead and click Save. And at this point, we can go ahead and close Recipe Creator. And we'll now open up DataMiner once again. Oh, Before we open up Data we do need to go back to our file and save it because eventually it will be uploaded to Data So let's go and save that real quick. And this does need to be saved as a CSV. So let's call this form fill test data. And again, CSV. Great, so that is done. So now we'll open up Data and begin setting up the actual form filling process. So let's click scrape this page. And we'll simply just walk through the steps of the form fill on the left-hand side here. You can upload your file here first if you'd like, but it's also something that can be done during the process as well. It's kind of up to you. So we'll just kind of keep it clean and simple and do it through the form filling process. So let's click form fill scrape on the left-hand side, and we'll simply just follow the steps at the top. So we'll click start, and we want to say create new form fill, and go to step 2. And then so this dropdown essentially will just be your list of form filling recipes. So from this, I'll be choosing the form fill test that I just created. And for the next step, we'll go to the one. So the next step is Data will essentially will use the original form that we built the recipe with, and it'll visit that to begin the process. So we click go to the URL. So that will go to the original form here. Looks good. And now we'll go to the next step, which is where we connect the data. So for this, as I said, we now want to upload the file. So we do form fill test, the data, click open. And so this is where the titles are now important because we will have to connect the CSV columns to the actual form fill elements. So if we scroll down, I'll be using that test that I just uploaded for our source. So now we can see the data there, so it looks good. All right, so for our first author element, we want to be using the author column. So we'll say value from file, and I'm choosing author. For our keywords, it will be using our keyword, or I guess for our keyword element, we'll be using our keywords data, value from file, keywords. So essentially, you just want to connect all of them. So we'll do that real quick. Book, comic, comic. Make sure to check the value from file, seller, and group, and select the value. Great. So now that all of our columns have been connected to the different elements, we can move on to the next step, which is simply just giving this process a name. So let's call this form fill test scrape. And here's where you can adjust the different number of rows where you want to inject the data. You can change the wait time. These are all kind of optional, but it will work just fine by default. One thing to kind of remember is since we're going to be scraping a search results page that has multiple pages, we want to use the follow pagination. And what this means is when it gets to the results, it will then click the number of pages that you indicate. So let's say we just want to do 3 per result. And if there's only 1 or 2, it'll go until it reaches the end, or it'll go until it reaches the number indicated here. So this looks good. So now let's just simply click Start Form Fill. And real quick, the data will then be available in the Download tab here. So let's go to the form, and we'll soon see the data injected. Great, so we have gym, dogs, book, North America, and now we have the data here. And it should now click, so capture the data in Data Miner, and now we're on page 2, and soon to be page 3. Great. And to review the data miner, let's go and expand this. So we have all the original source data from the CSV file, but then we also have the data that's being scraped, which is this URL here. So everything's looking good. Let's go back to the form. So now we're searching Ben, cats. So as you can see, everything's working as expected. And essentially at this point, you'll just let it run. One thing to be aware of is you do not want to close the data miner window because this is what's controlling the entire form filling process. And you also do not want to close the window where the data is coming from because otherwise we'd lose access to that data. So you want to make sure to keep both the windows open and active, but you can also just do a new window where you can then work there simultaneously. But that is pretty much it. I know this is a long video, so let us know if you have any questions. Make sure to send your questions to our support email, and that's support@dataminer.io. And again, I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching. All right, bye.